Hello and welcome everyone. This is Blackadder at Blackadder's Place, and today I'm going to be not streaming the No Patch tournament that I have been streaming as Age of Mythology in the past weeks, and well, it's basically months already. And I'm gonna go for some different games or some kind of diversity or anything, so that I have a break from actually streaming like 4 or 5 games of the same match. And these are going to be recorded games that I have found on RTS-Sanctuary and that do actually have interesting descriptions. So I'm kind of hoping that they are going to be exactly as interesting as the descriptions say. And the first game seems to be, as I've chosen it obviously, between TheMista and Titou. That is going to be played on Oasis, which is normal map. Especially going to be pretty great for Titou. I would be expecting us Oranos, but it's not really all that bad for an Egi as well. And seeing how TheMista is playing set, that's slightly unusual, as he isn't really known all that much for playing anything else than Norse or, of course, his favorite Zeus, rather overall Greeks. And I'm definitely interested to see how TheMista will approach playing set in this map, as Oasis is not really high hunt. It's kind of the opposite, obviously. All the animals that you can find here are basically giraffes, zebras, and a few hyenas, and on top of that, maybe monkeys when you are lucky. So not really ideal map. So let's see if that's going to be helping TheMista or if it's going to be helping Titou. Alright, so we are starting with a look at TheMista's side of the map, who is well plastered onto the wall in here, which is going to be nice for him for defense purposes. But at the same time, it also means that he's gonna have kind of useless 2 towers. The tower at the bottom is literally useless. You can see there is pretty nice defensive tree line in here, so he doesn't really need it at all. And the one at the top potentially could be useful because it seems like there's going to be a way through at the top, so at least not completely useless, but still he does have very open gold, and it's going to be quite tradable from this position on the top left, and it might be very easy access for Titou to go there. Otherwise, this hunt shouldn't be any kind of problem for him because it's gonna run out before classical age hits or anything like that. So this tower is going to be crucial as there is a way through and it will be easy for him to wall in there. Going for a bit of scouting with the goatees as he's locating the back TC for himself. You can see how he's actually nicely shift clicking into all the darkness in there. Both of them having the same in one group. And otherwise, looking at the top, there's an extra gold for him, so that's one that he will definitely have to be careful about, as it's almost looking like that actually there is no gold at the back. Let's cheat a bit with the Fog of War, and oh yeah, there actually isn't any gold at the back. Well, that's a pretty bad news for him, because as an Egi, he of course needs a whole lot of gold, and looking at the map of his opponent, Titou, who is having quite nicely positioned gold right at the top, next to TC basically. Well, that's definitely a pretty nice advantage right now for the red player. And something to keep in mind fully for TheMista, who is having also not really ideal placement of the gold. Right now going for the hyenas, as he is having the gold on the left, whereas the TC is on the right. So he's kind of going to be forced by the map itself to spread into the right side and into actually this passage to attack his opponent. And that means that he will somehow have to conquer this gold. So this is looking like a pretty good spot for a Migdol potential. And then he's definitely gonna have to wall about here. It's nicely positioned for him. There's going to be one wall about here, so that he has access to this gold. And it's going to be up to him if he chooses the trade route from here or from the very top. Well, let's have a look on Titou's side of map. Well, he has scouted already quite nicely, as he's not really letting the scouts or the oracles to stand idle. Right now he's just switching into it. He wanted to scout as fast as possible, which is useful for Oranos for one simple reason, and that is exactly this. Locating as many goals as possible, and since he is against the set, which means that the set of course is having quite nice scouting possibilities with the hyenas and all the animals, that's going to be very important for him to be at least having some of them. So relic for better gold trickle, or rather some kind of gold trickle. Could be better, but not all that bad. And this is nice for better house and manor hit points, so this is quite nice for Titou to be having right next to his home base, so that's definitely going to be helping him, and something that he will be quite interested in capturing into his temple. He has already discovered his opponent, so he knows where the base of his opponent is, and he has also, I think, seen the hyena. I think it was hyena. It was the hyena in here, as he's going for the hunt right next to the relic. Basically going to be making sure right now that it's not taken from him, and this is a pretty good hunting spot right next to gold, But otherwise, I don't see all that much of extra food, so he's probably gonna double back to his home base after all the chickens and potentially even the goats, which are in pretty decent numbers for him, considering that he had to fight with, or rather for them, with a set. So I'm going to turn off the fog of 4, as it's not going to be needed anymore. We are at 3:45, so we should be entering the stage where the players are going to be advancing, and this is very nice volume from TheMista. And does he actually know about the left part? Let's switch into his point of view. He does know absolutely everything. You can see that he has already quite nicely scouted with the double hyena, so he sees literally everything that he needs to see, and he has again discovered exactly this important spot. And I'm kind of thinking that this should be something that TheMista will be very nicely keeping in mind, and should be really quite careful about not to let TheMista or rather Titou get too much ahead of him in the economy and such. Hunt on the left, but I don't really think there's anything extra either. So this is basically confirming that this is a very low hunt map, as Oasis usually is. Berries on the right potentially, whereas in the middle a lot of monkeys, but he already had a few monkeys at the back, and you can see that TheMista is not really interested in the food from them, even though he could still gather it, of course, as I said, from the animals themselves, but he's more like looking for an animal army, for a bit of defense and potentially maybe a bit of raiding onto the villages in the early game. He's halfway through Ptah, whereas Titou is already through Prometheus almost, with the upgrades being hunting dogs and Bendry, and the other ones being just now researched, whereas TheMista finishing with the wall on the left and having so far no upgrades at all. And is something being researched at least? Doesn't seem so, so he seems to be quite content with just husbandry and this. And he has already captured one of the relics, which is which one? Menkare. Just drop it. Yeah, that's the one for the gold trickle. Well, of course, it's going to help him quite nicely. Hyena making sure that this oracle is not really free to scout as much as he wants to, but the one at the bottom definitely does. Okay, so right now locating basically all the goals that his opponent is having. This one is very nicely hidden because you can see it's right on the edge of the town center, so it's gonna be seen when his opponent is going for second EC, and that's very crucial information because it can tell you if you are supposed to be raiding right now or not, or basically if you are supposed to be advancing into the next age and all stuff like that. So far, looking at the base of his opponent, or rather of Titou, having double counter barracks, so it's going to be basically full turmas for full on raiding, as he's getting rid of the hyena at the back. But otherwise we don't see really anything interesting from TheMista, just going for armory, so that's probably going to be a bit of faster heroic, and you can see that he has actually used the gazelles that spawned from his temple as food source. Well, that's quite clever, to be honest. You can see exactly that he's getting the food from that, and that's definitely going to be useful for him, because it will allow the goats to get some extra fattening under the husbandry and such. And he can definitely use all those extra animals for food as well. So I'm kind of thinking this might be a very good strategy from him, as just now Titou is advancing into offensive. And at the same time, TheMista should be kind of getting ready almost for the heroic age, but so far not really. He's just now finishing, but having nothing that will be helping him, and unfortunately for Titou, he's going for the wrong side, and even though he has seen the villages in there, right next to the granary and such, he unfortunately probably doesn't know that there's nothing else in there. Oh, he actually does. So he was probably hoping that there's going to be something happening around the gold, or maybe some wallet and such, but that's not really the case, and a whole lot of turmas are so far not doing anything significant, as TheMista is completely turtling inside his own base and not really allowing his opponent to do anything else than go under the fire of the towers. Well, this is Turtle 2-0. This of course is quite dangerous for TheMista because he's going to be running out of gold pretty soon, and since he doesn't have any kind of map control at all, he's not even going for the second TC at the back, he is going to be forced to make some kind of pretty good push for the second gold. I'm not exactly sure what the second gold is going to be at this stage, because this is the closest one, so even though it's badly positioned for him, considering the extra TC in the middle of the map, it might be actually the one to choose for him. as yet again it's quite closer, and I'm fully expecting that he's gonna be attempting to actually capture it with Ancestors, and that should be quite enough if he's able to single at least a few of those Turmas in there. And yeah, it shouldn't really allow Titou to stop that from coming into reality. If this coming through, of course, especially with the shift in sense, that could also nicely help him in basically transporting the Enoian army literally somewhere else on the map, if he has somewhere else on the map, but will be seen, I guess, in just half a minute. At the same time, Titou is going for second DC, almost finished in there. Having some kind of extra economy upgrades, not yet. Just everything fairly standard.
In which?
Laborers having hand axe and pickaxe, so he has actually caught up with everything as we are talking about the TheMista, and some upgrade in here. I was maybe expecting that he could be investing in AB Copper Shields. That would be of course quite useful against Turmas, Turma army, but he probably doesn't want to waste the resources as he needs all the gold for the Migdol once he advances just about now, and you can see that he's moving slightly to the left and going for the vision to opponent's army. And it's actually shifting sense with Ancestors. Oh my! Well, that's a good idea. Because with this kind of idea and the army of his opponent basically being right now in the middle of the map, oh well. The DC is definitely not coming down as fast as he would have hoped, but still should be more than enough, and that didn't work out. You could have seen it actually through just the one ghost. That was pretty horrible shockwave from Titou. He was probably hoping that it's going to be having enough reach, and when he casts it in the middle of the DC, he's actually going to be throwing everything away. But yeah, well, that did not happen obviously, and that's definitely a pretty big problem, as that will help TheMista quite nicely, having Ancestors for still 20 seconds more, as the DC is gonna be stolen without any kind of problem. You can see that the army is going to be quite enough for him to get rid of all of this, and well, this is definitely a pretty nice surprise right here. So, Titou down to 1 TC. Quite lucky he has at least that one, that he reacted correctly to the third lane of his opponent for going for a bit better economy. But at the same time, it also means that Titou has lost 1, 2, at least 3 citizens. That's pretty horrible losses for him at this stage. And he has lost all the goats in here that were actually remaining. And that's a pretty nice bonus for TheMista, because you can see in his home base that he's already running out of them in there. And yep, this is going to be up to him right now to somehow deal with this problem. Looking at the armory, we also possibly could have missed a heroic age from Titou. Let's have a check if he's researching it in the other TC. He isn't. So maybe we didn't. Maybe could have looked at that. That's a bit of a shame for me. Definitely could have went a bit better for me in the casting, but still, you can see that he's having quite enough gold, TheMista, to go for even mercenaries, but he is definitely going to be running out. And looking at the towers all around, not even this gold is going to be all that easy for him, but it's looking like that actually this town center is quite nicely in range exactly of the tower, so sooner rather than later he's gonna be able to take it down, and then the gold should be reasonably his, which is definitely a pretty good bonus for him, looking at the amount of villagers that he has been able to spawn on the top side. So mercenaries, of course, is going to be dying quite soon, as in his home base he's just continuing building villages into right now woodline, and still having a lot of on gold that is right now running out. So he has already moved to the top. And unfortunately for Titou, he does have only the Promethean, which is of course going to die, but at the same time, if Titou noticed, oh, he probably didn't. I'm kind of thinking that he actually didn't notice that he was too engaged in the battle in his home base. And that's a pretty nice bonus right now, because Titou might not realize that he is not having the line of sight there anymore. Which, oh, or does he? Actually, does he from this oracle? He should know about it, but he probably won't see them all that much, because they are gathering from the right side. So quite lucky for TheMista, and unlucky for Titou, because obviously, if you are having something moving at the bottom, you are going to be noticing it a whole lot easier than if there's just nothing. A lot of extra release right now should be visible. So yeah, there's going to be a bit of movement for Titou to catch his attention, but he is doing a pretty good job in the defense, even through just full Turmas, basically. There's a few more milos in here, not really enough to make any kind of lasting difference. And let's see if the town center is going to be standing. I'm not exactly sure. You can see very nice extra base being built right next to the gold. And also an idol, probably finishing the tree. Not idle anymore, and it's almost looking like the TC is actually going to be lost, and there's going to be a bit of belly fight right now from TheMista to get rid of the Turmas, and it seems to be quite viable so far, or viable. It doesn't really matter at this point, because if he's going to lose the TC, he's going to lose the villages as well, so he might just as well try to do as much damage as he can with them, and that's exactly what he's doing right now. At this time, it's also allowing him, I mean all the crocodiles in here, to make some kind of advance and secure the gold on the left, which is definitely exactly what he needs, and he's probably not going to be minding all that much losing the TC at the top, as really the damage has been dialed, and I'm fairly certain that Titou is not really in a pretty good spot, even though he's housed, he's having economic kinda in tatters in here, and TheMista, well, he's much better off with 1000 food, almost 1000 gold, and does he have the market already? Oh yeah, he does. So he's gonna be advancing into Mythical Age even. Well, interesting. So Exodus of Willis from Egypt into the land promised. How many of them can actually survive? I would maybe at this point just pick like 4 or 5 and send them against the Turmas and let the rest basically retreat. This does two things. It will basically catch attention of Titou's army if he's not properly microing, and second, it will make the second army, or the second group of villagers move faster, because when you are under attack, the whole group is moving slower, so that's also the reason why it would be wiser for TheMista to make an attempt actually divide the army of villagers. Horus is going to be the Mythical Age god with all the crocodiles. It's kind of unusual. I can't really remember actually seeing Set using all that many animals in here. Some creative use in here, and that's definitely the reason. The reason for that is that actually TheMista is not an Egi player and doesn't really play Set all that often. And that means that he's seen really a lot of different options how he can use the god to his advantage. And he's definitely surprising Titou quite a lot. As Titou, even though he's leading in the score, I don't really think that he's leading in the game. As TheMista is most definitely the one setting the pace of it all. Kind of curious why TheMista isn't actually attempting to build a big door in here. He does have the gold. So, seeing how he really does require this gold mine, there's not much of a chance to actually go for the one on the right, even though he's at least going for the food there. Just right now from Titou, as he's trying to make sure that the TC is not gonna come under the opponent's power. And well, with the Horus coming in, we're going to see if we're going to use it in some kind of clever point, or if it's gonna go yet again in basically the same situation to capturing second and third TC at the same time. And this could basically mean, or rather should mean, that even though TheMista is having advantage in economy, or rather economy, quite the opposite, upgrades, Titou should be having a pretty big advantage in economy rather soon. So let's see about this from now on. Pushing into Titou, will not advancing even into Heroic Age. In which case, I'm not entirely sure that investment into the TC just now is exactly all that needed. Because it's a villager not gathering anything, as it takes quite a long time to build a TC. And also, he doesn't really have the food to support it right now. Quite a big surplus of gold. So the economy is really all over the place for Titou right about now. And, well, nicely played Turmas at the bottom, quite nicely paying off, as TheMista is attempting to take at least the second DC, and unfortunately not really paying attention at the bottom, as he's fully engaged with a bit of animals at the top. And, of course, Tornado in the home base. So, it looks like goodbye DC. Going to the right or not? Oh yeah, it's going for the DC. So, DC down. Tornado did its damage. As on the left, we are seeing a switch from Crocodiles into Rhinos. And the Avenger. Yeah, that's going to be a pretty big problem, because only one Turma in here and almost dead. Yeah, you can see. That was nice. That was nice indeed. And this guy could actually help him, or rather hold it just by himself. Because you can see that Titou doesn't have any kind of even resources on heroes. He does have a ton of gold, but since he's not in Heroic, he cannot really build a market yet. So yeah, he cannot really help himself. So even though he does a very nice goal gathering on the right, he definitely could use a switch to other resources like food, for example, or definitely mainly food, but that's not really happening right about now. So decent amount east of Murmilos, but still this dude going to just shred them. And the Rhinos as well. They're actually not half bad, because that's 200 hit points. Pretty decent armor if you have a look at it. 37% melee, 46% against spears. That's a lot. And 15 attack. It's actually really quite decent bonuses and such. And even though he does have malus against buildings, as you can see, minus 50%, it's still definitely a pretty great tank. And not unlike elephants that usually Egyptians do. A bit of extra fighting in here, as Titou is basically still in classical age at 18 minutes. Whereas his opponent is in mythical age already. Yeah, pretty tough time for him, as he's basically trying to stay alive as much as he can, but yep, I think he kinda underestimated the position, or underestimated. It's not like he had much of a choice, this was simply quite nicely played by his opponent, TheMista, and I think that just about the time when he was under attack, he wanted to advance into heroic age, and basically TheMista attacked at exactly the right spot, deleted the TC, and well, it all went pretty downhill for Titou from there. Their TC being captured right now by TheMista, as Titou is still down to just one, as this is going to be finished because of finally seen a migdol from TheMista. And well, Rhinos still fighting in here and doing quite good, quite well against this guy. And oh, this is unfortunate. This is quite unfortunate, because this guy is quite important for the fights in here, even though with the migdol probably not anymore. But the fight against a hero is definitely something that shouldn't really happen all that much. And well, probably TheMista didn't really mind all that much anymore. Well. Titou is most definitely not going anywhere, so even TheMista going, for example, for something else? Not really. You can see that his economy is totally depleted, like absolutely, and he's not even at pop. He's at just 94, which basically means that he's probably not having any kind of upgrades, of course. Having just the baseline. But the switch into the chariot archers will be pretty deadly right now for Titou, because still Titou is in classical age, and also chariot archers are overall pretty strong, and especially in skilled hands like TheMista has, and proper micro, they are very hard to catch and are able to deal pretty significant damage to both armies and economies. Attempt to build a wall to protect the extra gold for Titou, yet again. I still can't understand why Titou is actually gathering so much gold. He's probably thinking that he's gonna be forced off gold sometime soon, but that's not really true. He's having gold right next to his TC. He's still having gold inside his own base, as he's rebuilding his own TC for the second time. So I'm not really understanding this decision by him. He doesn't need gold, he needs absolutely everything else. Even on wood they would be better, because it will allow him to build farms, of course. But still, kinda weird decision, as TheMista is inching forward into one more attack. One more attack, and they are finally coming in for Titou. But is it going to be in time, and what TC is it? 13. Well, what TC? He's having just one, so go figure. But there are absolutely no siege or anything that could be dealing with buildings, so it should be pretty much fine for Titou to advance into the next age. But still, Avenger alive, actually healed. Oh well, he was actually healed in here, as you can see. Back to 205, as he was almost getting there. And yeah, this is not going to work for Titou, because Thea doesn't have any kind of impactful god power, and the only thing that actually she can do is spam at least a few birdies, which might be useful, as we see just one pharaoh. We can micro him properly with all those turmas. Seems like that TheMista is paying attention to that quite nicely, and well, unfortunately he had a waypoint in here, yep, exactly behind the turma, and that's exactly where the pharaoh is. So pretty big fight right about now, and it's basically all about the game right now, because if Titou cannot hold this attack, he's pretty much toast, as he's already losing the farms, which is pretty crucial for him, but he is in a spot where he should be able to build a market. Probably at the bottom I would be expecting it's a bit safer spot for him. counter wall in by TheMista in here. As a bit of trading is going on from Murmilos. But yeah, we don't really see the market yet, which means that still Titou is unable to trade even for the food to support this economy and support his army overall, which is of course going to be helping TheMista quite nicely as he's at 40 Cs. He has taken the front one in here from Titou, and switching into his point of view, he is, well, at 140 pop limit, which is pretty decent, and already sending mercenaries to help him as well. So yeah, pretty tough situation right now for Titou, even though he is at 2 TCs. Yep, he decides to call it a game, and this was very interestingly played set, I have to say. This was really out of there, because you don't see set to first use pond animals for food actually all that often. Usually you use them, or rather you see them used for actually aggression and raiding. That's really unusual, so that was quite nice thinking by TheMista on a low hunt map to actually help him in faster advance, and then the super surprising shift in sense to opponent's TC. That worked very nicely. Nicely indeed in there. And then the spamming of the animals, that was definitely something that doesn't happen from set. That's like the first time I'm seeing it. Could have been played a bit before the balance patches and such. But right now, that was really a look into something quite different as a set. Well, that's what happens when actually non-mains play the god that they don't really play all that often. They can see all the different things that can actually work for them, and this is something to keep in mind, and a pretty good recorded game for set players to learn how to use the god differently than what you see in, for example, in RTS League and even normal tournaments like No Patch and such. So I wanted to have a look actually if there was a heroic age being researched by Titou. So let's just go for that. Once the attack had happened, so let's just wait for it. Because I unfortunately missed switching into Titou's point of view in there. I can now see the Gazelle is going to be sent into Slaughter. So drop in armory, and yeah, he was going into Thea. He actually was going into Thea through the DC. Well, yeah, that was pretty sad for him. And at this point, you can right now see the consequences of the decision. Instead of going for Heroic Age in the other TC, which I think would have been quite helpful to him, he didn't, and it might have been also because he actually forgot about the auto queue, and then he thought he doesn't have the resources. It might be all because of this one small thing. Because he doesn't need food in the army that he was having. He was having just Turmas, and like, yeah, he was building just one more mill in there, in line. It wasn't really any kind of problem. So that might have been actually the problem that lost him the game in the long run. Because if he was heroic, and with the gold supply that he had, he could have been having some extra dryads, and much more importantly, he could have made a market. He could have traded for resources that he needed. So that might really have been the reason that he lost the game in the long run, even though, of course, TheMista played quite nicely. So I just finish with the recorded game, so that we can have a look into the post game. So you're going to be seeing the massacre in a bit faster speed right now. And the wonder of Titou gathering so much gold he doesn't need. Yeah, enjoy all those set animals. Oh, the efficiency. Oh, the efficiency of the farmers in there. Alright, so we are going to be entering the finishing line. So let's have a look at the post game of the game itself. And well, TheMista is of course going to be winning on basically all fronts. Titou having better economy. Well, because of the Atlantean citizens, I would be thinking, and of course because TheMista wasn't gathering with like 3/4 of the villages for quite a long time. So that makes a bit of difference. Oh, such a huge difference in resources actually. That's 3 and 4, 7 and 3, 10,000 more resources for Titou. And it did him absolutely no good. Simply because of better strategy by TheMista, and quite surprising one. At 20-minute heroic age. From Oranos, that's a novelty. That's definitely a novelty. As Atlanteans are of course known from advancing into the heroic age as basically the fastest ones, besides faster heroic. So yeah, there you go. There you go. Crocodile offset. Plenty of those did TheMista make. Well, GG. That was quite an interesting and unusual game.